Hello, everyone in SHL. Welcome to our second episode of the J Tonight. They tried to shut us down after our first week, but we are back. I'm your host, Patrick. Exactly. I'm your host, Patrick. And with me tonight is my great co-host, Toaster. How are you doing this week, Toaster?
Pretty good. Still tired. NHL playoffs still rolling on. Didn't learn my lesson last week, but
It's worth it.
we're doing
It's
good.
worth it to watch the games and stay up late on it. So
There's been some good ones.
welcome to everybody joining us in the stream. What I'm going to do is I kind of want to get this pushed out more because we didn't have any answers last week. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to make a comment of it in the stream as well. All you have to do is just answer the question. You will be entered into the drawing for 100,000 SHL dollars to be able to buy your own Ruby pack. So you get a free Ruby pack on behalf of the J Tonight. Tonight's trivia question is how many team awards, we're talking about trophies, 4-star cups, Lena Ledvik and Larifer trophies, it's hard to say that one, has the Great Falls Grizzlies won? So how many team trophies throughout their existence has the Great Falls Grizzlies won? And all you'd have to do is just answer it in the chat, and you will be entered into the drawing for the 100,000 SHL bucks. So let me post that.
To get the addiction of cards started.
Get that going. I'm going to star both of them so that they are up there. All right. Well, let's get into it tonight. So let's just jump right into it. So the second week of simming has wrapped up earlier this afternoon. Last week, we kind of dove a lot into the standings. We know you guys are able to go look at the standings and read them yourself. So we just kind of wanted to give our own top 5 power rankings of how we felt this week. There's a lot of answers going into it. Yes, S Fresh, we have started. And BV says Nevada is pain. So let's get into our top 5 power rankings of week 2 of the SHL. Number 1 is not going to be a surprise to anybody at all. Huge week of simming for this team, St. Louis Scarecrows. They went 17-3 this week. They got a .85 point percentage. They scored 99 goals and had 62 goals scored against them, plus 37 on the goal differential. Toaster, take it through. You have it. It's your team. Celebrate being number 1 on the power rankings.
I mean, it feels good after last season to finally be seeing some victories. I've obviously only locker room I've been in, but I haven't seen a locker room be so hyped since I joined.
A lot of kissing this week, I take it.
A lot of it.
And only 3 announcements of retirements.
And only 3 announcements of retirements.
So
all-time low.
Said 99 goals and Toaster scored 1. You actually had a hat trick finally.
Finally had a hat trick, and probably my best week in terms of scoring yet.
We'll go over leaders here in a little bit of the league leaders. But overall, just an absolute dominant week of hockey by the St. Louis Scarecrows. They knocked Kelowna down from the top spot, and they just kept holding on to it day after day in the Sims. So just a great overall week for St. Louis.
Only losses to 2 other top 5 teams, and then a surprise upset by San Diego Title.
Yep, those were the 3 losses. And Vancouver's a really solid team, and so is Quebec City. I think the Title are still struggling, but they're still a pretty solid team, and it's tough to beat them. And this is something that you talked about with me. I'm going to put this comment up on it. The third line was unbelievable in St. Louis this week. So, that's what you kind of told me.
Most of our production came from the third line. I don't know what cake fed them in the tactics, but it's working.
That's awesome. That is great to hear. I heard that there's other big news coming out of St. Louis. Do you want to share that?
There is, since Cake's departure to move up to EDM as the co-GM, we've been searching long and hard for a new co-GM, and Jimmy finally selected one, and it's me.
Yay! Toaster gets to be co-GM of St. Louis and get credit for this great sim week.
Yep, I can take credit. Definitely wasn't announced yesterday after the Sims had already ended, but hey, 3-1 today. I'll take it.
Hey, that's a great honor. I'm very proud of you. Congrats on being co-GM of
Thank
St.
you.
Louis. Jimmy's already such a solid GM to learn underneath, and that team's only going to be even better.
He's got a lot to teach me, but we'll get there.
They're already trying to demote him.
Jimmy for co.
Congrats, Toaster. Congrats. Just everybody very happy. I mean, the one thing about this league that everybody knows is everybody loves Toaster, and it's very exciting. Very exciting that you got that job. Been building you up for that for like 2 weeks now. I think. And then I let it go.
Since Cake stepped down, I think within 5 minutes there was Toaster for go. Toaster for go.
Well, let's continue on with the power rankings. So our second team might surprise a lot of people, but it kind of shocked me when I was looking through just results this week. But the numbers don't lie. This team definitely deserves to be number 2 on week 2 power rankings, and that's the Great Falls Grizzlies. They went 10-4-1 on this sim week. They had they got the 0.700 point percentage going for them, 61 goals for, 43 against. Now that's only a plus 18 goal differential, but if you look, they let in the least amount of goals of all these teams on the power rankings. Mm-hmm. They also scored the least, but overall, just a solid week for Great Falls. Moved up a couple spots with this week, and just all around great. What did you see out of Great Falls?
This is probably the one where you and I disagree. I do think they should be in the top 5. I don't think they're number 2 though.
Where would you put
them? 4, probably. They have been winning a lot, but a lot of the wins are teams below them. I think they're like 2-4, 2-5 against teams that are above them in the standings, but still 10-4 is impressive.
It is, especially for, I think the reason why I have them as number 2 is just overall, they've won the games that they're supposed to win. Yeah. Some of these lower teams, they've struggled against teams that they shouldn't have struggled against. And I think that's kind of where, but I can definitely see why you'd put them low. Now, I will absolutely say that the rest of these teams, it's a mixed bag. I mean, St. Louis absolutely ran away with the week, but the next 4, you could mix them and put them kind of anywhere in the power rankings, and it would make sense. AO1. And we just have a lot of chat going on in the comments. I love it. I'll go to number 3. So my number 3 team this week, and I have Carolina Kraken coming in at 3. They went 11-5-2 this sim, 0.666 on the point percentage, 88 goals for, 60 goals against, with a plus 28 goal differential. Just a great week for them. Very, very, they're staying steady. I think they're coming in at they're sitting second overall. Great home record, 12-5-1, away record, 10-3-1. Just a very solid team. They're just moving along and
deserved to be in the top 3 in the rankings.
And then number 4 kind of moved up here. They had a really rough first sim week, and they bounced back. It's not the greatest sim week, but just compared to last week, and honestly, it kind of shows you how bad the sim week was for a lot of teams. Detroit coming in at 10-6 with a 0.625 point percentage, 80 goals for, 50 against, with a plus 30 goal differential. Their goalies, 0-1's finally getting some help there. So
He
overall,
was getting peppered week 1.
yep. I haven't finished the rankings yet.
Impatient.
Where would you have put Detroit?
If we're having Great Falls move down to 4, I'd probably put Detroit 5. Have
5.
QCC at 3.
Okay.
Jumping ahead there.
Well, let's go right into the 5th one I have, which is QCC. Them going 11-7-1, 0.605 point percentage, 84 goals for, 66 against, plus 22 on the goal differential. That is, I felt like that it was really hard to determine who that 5th team was for me. QCC's holding their spot. They TPE wise, we've talked about that first week. We didn't think that they would be up there, but they're staying firm at the top and playing really, really good hockey over this one.
Yep.
And this is very true. BB says QCC can't fucking die. And I think that's why they're here. Now, I will say it was really hard to leave Vancouver out of the rankings. I think they were 10 and something. I don't have it written down, but my main reason for leaving Vancouver out is not my undying hatred for Vancouver. It's they played Anchorage. They played us several times this sim. And I mean, they did what they were supposed to do. They absolutely dog walked us every single game. But beating up on lower teams doesn't really help you when we're looking at it. They also had a loss to Newfoundland. They lost to Carolina. They lost to Great Falls, and they lost to Yukon. So those losses kind of hurt them in this week's power rankings.
Looks like they were 11-6-2.
11-6-2, yeah. So overall, I mean, it's still good. I think they'd come in at 6 on my list, but overall, I feel like getting, how many was that? I think it was 4 wins over Anchorage. You take that out and maybe replace that with another team, we're talking about something completely different. Yes, 4 wins over Anchorage in this sim.
Only this year's Anchorage. They'll be better next season.
Gotta hope.
Or later on, once the rookies earn.
Which brings us to the drop from the top. Kelowna absolutely killed it the first week of sim, and they kind of got humbled this week. Their record going 9-9-2 for a 500 point percentage on this week's sim. They had a stretch of games, 10-game stretch where they went 2-8 in that stretch. So just a really, really rough week for Kelowna. 90 goals for, 92 goals against, with a -2 goal differential. So you're hoping that Kelowna can kind of bounce back from that week 2 struggle and kind of reach out to being the top team that it was earlier. But just a really, really rough sim week for.
Yeah, they had a 3-point lead over second place week 1. Another 4th. Well, a 4-way tie for second.
Yep. So everybody's admitting that. Shawnee also said that their goalie had a 700 save percentage against Yukon with 1 4-quality shots and 4 3-quality shots. I think a lot of teams are starting to get FHM'd, and unfortunately, Vancouver. I mean, Vancouver. I would have took Vancouver sim week. They're still sitting 5th. Can't complain about that. I think they'll still keep moving forward on it.
Yeah,
and
there'll always be games where we get FHM'd, but I think they're strong enough to balance out against it.
And since we talked so much trash about them last week, we have to bring them up again. Let's celebrate Thunder Bay for getting 5 wins on this sim window. They had
1.
They took St. Louis to a shootout.
Yep.
They beat Anchorage. They beat Kelowna. They beat Colorado. and Anchorage again, and Kelowna again. So
There's a few quality wins in there.
yeah, not the Anchorage ones.
Johnny says Tampa Bay shocked us in the locker room. I'm sure.
So let's go into, I'll go ahead and share my screen real quick, and we will go into league leaders. There's a couple of people that you should know on the leaderboard after this Sims week 2. Go into this.
I think that's correct, BV. Did have 6 wins there in Nevada.
Yep. So looking at the leaderboard, top 5 in each category. Goals, Mel Gula still leading the way with 33 goals. Kim Chwan out of Carolina having 28. Boogan McGillicuddy out of St. Louis with 27. Shiny Rainbow out of QCC with 22. Coming in tied for 5th.
Tied for 5th and a lengthy list there.
But you'll take it. You're the first one listed.
I'll
Toivu
take it.
Jokinen. And then Thurston Bull, Dirk Deinhardt, and Timothy Welch all coming in with 21 goals scored. Coming over to assist, top 5, Dirk Deinhardt out of Kelowna, Colton Paragecko, second out of Kelowna, David Corrigan, third out of Kelowna, 37, 36, and 35 respectively. Swiffer Sweeper out of St. Louis with 33, and Dakota Glover with 32 out of St. Louis. So
it's the second line right there.
Yep. Points, Mel Gula out of Kelowna with 59, Dirk Deinhardt with 58 out of Kelowna, Kim Chwan with 52 out of Carolina, Dakota Glover with 50 out of St. Louis, and David Corrigan with 49 out of Kelowna. And you're just at 7 with 44.
Measly 7. I already beat my points last season.
We're starting to see some of the plus minus even out from the earlier absolute blowouts. Rondalis Ringo Ramat with 31 on a plus minus. Mel Gula
That's
with
a
31.
Rookie defenseman leading plus
That's
minus
awesome.
there.
That is awesome. He's is he your third pairing defenseman?
Yep, I believe so.
That third line's killing it for you. Mel Gula out of Kelowna with a 31. Dirk Deinhardt out of Kelowna with a 30. Chungle Down Bim with a 29 out of St. Louis, and Boogan McGillicuddy with a 28 with St. Louis. A lot of those are just St. Louis and Kelowna going at it right now. Shots, just to kind of touch on the top ones. Levi Bedrock with 140 shots, up by 1 against Dirk Deinhardt out of Kelowna. Shot percentage, Mel Gula leading with a 28.45. Zach Peters out of St. Louis leading in hits with a 135. There were 2 fights last week. And maybe more. There might have been more than 2 fights, but 2 fights won by Lou Locksky and Nathan Boldy out of Detroit and Ottawa, respectively. Penalty minutes out of Newfoundland, Anton Bjornen with 34.
Close enough.
This is my favorite part of the show. Shots blocked, Gene Bond with 106 out of St. Louis. Power play goals, we have Lucas Lindberg out of Maine with 10. And shorthanded goals, Leo Carlson out of Ottawa, Swiffer Sweeper out of St. Louis, and Timothy Welch out of QCC, all with 3. And that wraps up all the top ones there.
I feel like that's a lot more power play goals this week than last week. I feel like the highest one last week was what, 3, 4?
Yeah, there wasn't a whole lot. And there was 0 fights last week. I do remember that.
You're on that list, number 4, with 8 power play goals.
Yep.
Patrick Rowe. Nice.
Yeah, it's about the only positive thing going right for my player this season. I am leading Anchorage in goals and points, but other than that, not much. Leading the way with wins, the top 5 wins for goalies, Timo Järvinen out of St. Louis with 21, Ebi Bjorner with 18 out of Yukon, Yuri Satoshi out of Kelowna with 16, Lurtz McCord with 15 out of QCC, and KJ Daniels with 14 out of Newfoundland. Let's get down to goals against average. Theo Dahl out of Detroit leading with 2.41. Andrew Druski leading with 2.53 out of St. Louis. Tyler Bodega out of Great Falls Grizzlies with a 2.6. And Jack out of Vancouver with a 2.7 goals against. And Victor Bjork Pelika with a 2.84. And KJ Daniels leading the league with 918 shots out of Newfoundland. Ebi Bjorner, Joe McPadstack, Mr. Kicksave 41, Lurtz McCurry, Victor Bjork Pelika, George Dansk, John Gibson, and Cauliflower Pizza, all with 2 shutouts, tied for first. And then save percentage, top 5, Martin McElmore with a .914 out of QCC, Victor Bjork Pelika with a .91 out of Ottawa, Travis Coates with a .907 out of Maine, Joe McPadstack with a .9 out of Carolina, and Andrew Druski with a .90 coming in 5th out of St. Louis. All fun and games until someone gets St. Louis in the playoffs. So, anything you see in here that you'd like to talk about?
Something we're going to touch on a little later, I believe, but the shutout numbers seem a little lower with FHM 10 over 8.
Yeah, so last year, well, not necessarily. I mean, we're halfway through the season. Last year's shutout numbers were 5 was the leader, and then 4, 4, 4, 3, 2.
Maybe not
on it. But we are going to talk on that a little bit because, well, let's just get right into it since we wrapped up that one. We'll skip segment 2 for now. Let's just go into what we wanted to talk about. So we are week 3 of the FHM 10 transition. 1 preseason, 2 regular season weeks. So let's kind of look and see how we feel about these things and see if we can prove our point a little bit. So the first question I had for you, Toaster, do you feel like there are more goals or do you think it's just an illusion?
It definitely seems like it. I mean, I feel like almost every sim, there's at least one game where there's a combined 14 or more goals. And I don't think we ever saw an 18-3 game before.
There were high scoring games, but I don't think it was ever that bad.
Like save percentages are mostly down.
Yeah. I mean, if you go into just the same percent, let's go into the same percentage. You know, this is the end of the season on 81. Martin McElmore had a .914. You flip over to season 81, and now he's not even in the top of that.
Yeah, top there. 90.
But the top one was .921. So, I mean, the leading one on it is actually a little bit better. So it's a .914 compared to a .921. So slightly less on that. If we go into, let's just look at goals. We'll have to divide the other one by half, obviously, to try to get an ideal. So top goal scorer right now, Kelowna with 33. Season 81, Josie Katz ended the year with 48.
So half season to be 15 24. Minutes.
Yeah. So that points to goals being way higher. Going into overall goals for, so the top 3 teams had 283 goals for, 314 goals for, and 302 goals for. And then this season, they're sitting at the halfway mark. You have 171. So if we double that, we're looking at 342 on goals for.
Yeah, which about 30 more than last season.
Thank you for this. I could absolutely do that on it. So let's go. There's not a great way to compare apples to apples for this. But let's look at, so St. Louis top team this year. They are sitting at your goals for per game is 4.89 on it. Going over to, let's see, the top team last year.
Newfoundland with 314.
Yep. So let's go into Newfoundland. And last year they were at a 4.76 goals per game. So 4.76 compared to 4.89. So they are up. I mean, goals are up slightly.
Yeah. So it's not quite an illusion. Definitely seems to be.
Let's go. So do you feel like goalies are getting hurt by this switch?
Yeah. Stats, save percentage, not quite as high. Goals alloved's higher.
Yep.
If I was a goalie, I'd be pretty sad.
01 says goals are up compared to their testings too, which is
all
very
just too
true.
Strong.
I'm going to have to sit down and do this because I'm trying not to do it on air, and I really do appreciate the info on it. I think what we will do is try to break down some of this more towards the end of the season to look at how serious these changes were and how it really changed the gameplay in FHM 10. BV says that she's personally hurt by the FHM 10 switch. And 01 says, I'm at the lowest of my lows as a goalie right now. So I don't want to just keep trashing it. But, and this is a good point. Haven't looked at the J, but no SHL starter is above 900. In a personal anecdote, I try not to equate it because I know the team's completely different than it was last year. But Johnny Hockey, as goalie for Anchorage, has been getting lit up. But funny enough, our rookie goalie is doing way better. And then me and you are both in the Texas chat, and it seems to be the younger goalie is doing better than Antique. So it's really, really weird on it. BB says, remember to hug your goalies and pat their heads after sims. Everybody needs to do that. And
imagine being a goalie in your prime just to suffer the switch to HM10.
Yep.
Yeah, I'm looking at
But what is something that you like about FHM10?
The interface is a lot cleaner. Getting shot qualities is pretty cool. to see. Sometimes it seems like it doesn't really matter, as I don't remember who pointed out earlier, but low quality shots getting through and high quality shots are getting stopped. But
yeah, it's really cool to look at the shot quality. I love how the sims are, which I played a lot of FHM 10 by myself, so I kind of knew the difference between it already. But it's been a lot more fun to watch the sims and how quick they are. We
sure.
talked about last week. I think that means that we'll be able to see more live sims, just because it's moving much quicker without having to do a whole lot of goalie swaps and stuff like that. There's been some slowdowns, but the sim team has been absolutely awesome on working in it constantly. So shout out to the sim team for everything that they do. It's they're handling this change masterfully, and they're moving along with it, even though all of us are complaining about me and you aren't complaining. We're forwards.
I'm not complaining at all. I love it.
You got your first hat trick. I had a 4-goal, 2-assist game too. So it's
if you're anyone but a goalie is loving it.
Yeah.
It definitely is nice having the sims be quicker without the goalie change breaks.
And this is another point, and Toaster, you'll get into this side part of it too. From a GM perspective, everything about FHM 10 is easier to use, says Raman.
So they can auto set the goalies, so they don't have to. The simmer doesn't have to change them, and gets rid of the 15-minute breaks between days.
Yep. So let's backtrack on our show sheet. Last week we wanted to bring this to you guys, and we just literally ran out of time, which is why we're trying to shorten every segment a little bit more, because we're trying to keep these to an hour. So if we feel like we're rushing through something and we're not diving deep enough in it, understand that we're sorry. We really want to dive into everything deep, but we also don't want you guys to hate us after 60 plus minutes. So last week, and this was Toaster's idea for our show, was that we want to do an in-season cup look at every single week. See who has the cup, how it's going. Now last week it would have been boring. It was Kelowna. The Kelowna was the answer. This week it changed. This week it got exciting. So, that's something that we're going to take a look at here. Toaster, I'm going to let you go into your notes first while I get the screen up for it.
See here. I don't. Did you do the in-season cup? I don't think you did. Did you?
I did not. I did not get into it in time. I also was trying to kind of keep my activity a little bit lower, because by the time the in-season cup was announced, I knew that I was going to be doing the show, and I wasn't trying to overload with a bunch of other stuff.
I'd be interested in like a poll to see how many people picked who they thought would win versus who just picked their favorite teams. Because I definitely just picked my favorite teams, at least to begin with. St. Louis first pick. Hasn't worked out so far.
Well, and the say it in the comments. Who did you pick for the in-season cup? Was it teams that you liked, or was it teams that you thought was going to win? How did you go about it?
It's interesting because it's not really who is dominant. It's who beats who when. So you can't really predict it as easily.
So I'm going to go ahead and share this tab now. I had to make sure I wasn't in some other tab. So as you see, all the way up until last week on the 3rd, which is right here, Kelowna had the cup. Kelowna kept the cup for the first 3 games of their sim, and they ended up losing it to Newfoundland. Newfoundland held on to it for 3 games, and they surprisingly lost it to Anchorage. So we got to hold the cup for a day.
How did it feel?
Then we gave
it shiny?
For basically just flying to San Diego with it for them to take it, and San Diego took it away from Anchorage. for them to end up losing it to Carolina, who held on to it for 4 days. Then Newfoundland took it back from Carolina and held on to it for 4 games. And then Great Falls got it, and Great Falls held on to it for 6 days before losing it to Detroit, who then went straight on to losing it to UConn, who held on to it for 2 games, followed by UConn losing to Quebec City, and Quebec City holding on to it for 5 games. And now it sits with Great Falls, who will be going into their 5th game with it, which brings us to the standings of Kelowna has had the cup for 24 days. Great Falls has had it for 10 days. QCC has had it for 8 days. Newfoundland has had it for 7 days. So right now it's sitting with Great Falls, so they have every ability to extend that. But right now, Kelowna has a very, very huge lead on
Very
everybody
big.
else. Teams that have not touched the cup yet include Colorado, Maine, Nevada, Ottawa, Thunder Bay, Vancouver, and unfortunately, Toaster, you have not touched the cup.
We've never seen it. Don't even know what it looks like.
So those are the teams that haven't had it. I did flip through the standings. It seems to be like a high average score right now for group leaders is in the 30s. Some groups have lower scores than that. Other groups have slightly higher scores for that. But from my quick glance earlier this afternoon, the highest points for a user right now is Leafs FTW 1967, and he is leading his group with 47 points. His teams are Kelowna, Detroit, Great Falls, and Newfoundland, and all of those teams have touched the cup.
Pretty much
so
the
far.
top.
Yeah,
4 teams almost.
Yep. So he picked, or they picked the correct teams on it. So that was the highest one. If there's another highest one, you're the highest one, and I didn't shout you out. I'm sorry. It was a very quick glance of going group by group and looking real quick, but not wanting to.
If we're going by golf rules, I'm killing my group with 0 points right now.
That's how my fantasy's going. Owan picked teams that he thought would perform. My boy Tommy, teams that he liked, has not gone well. 01 plays they've had both Kelowna and Great Falls. And then a really good question coming in from G Hamps. Would you guys recommend any changes next season for the in-season cup? Toaster, you're participating in it. You got to tell me.
I think it's been a fun addition so far. Not quite as fun as fantasy has been, but I feel like it'd be kind of hard to do fantasy with the Jays with all the different cap limits. But it's a nice individual thing that only the Jays have, and I've unfortunately sucked at it so far, but I think it's pretty fun.
I would like to. I think I really like it. I like that it's for the J. I think that's a way to get more people to kind of watch the J as well, or keep an eye on it. We get into our own rhythm of the team that we played for in the J. That's who we're gonna watch or just pay attention to, and everything else is background noise once you get called up to the SHL. And I think that this is a really good way to really get more eyes on the J and have people kind of having a very strong rooting interest in 4 teams. I mean, I think that's great. You have 4 teams in the J that you're rooting for every sim. So, that's really, really awesome. I also huge shout out to the people that keep these sheets updated and going. Without you guys, we would be not being able to bring you this information. So please thank all the hardworking people in this league, because there is no real money that we make for this, but a lot of people put their talents into so many things in this league to make it run so well, make us spoiled with a lot of things. And also shout out to Jess. She is the one that made all these new graphics for the SMJHL tonight that we were running tonight, and I can't thank her enough because they look great. I think me and you were both blown away once we saw them, and we're very excited to use them tonight. G-Ham
Finally get our
says,
own look.
yeah, we're not running the same one. G-Ham said, before today's sim, only 6 of 96 users had 0 points.
All right, thanks for calling me out like that. That's fun. Appreciate that.
And then they also said, we plan on introducing an SHL version next season, but we'll be keeping the J version. I agree, needing more eyes on J. I don't think adding a SHL version is a bad thing. I would like, if we are going to do an SHL version, my concern would be that a lot of people would forget about the J version of it. So maybe finding a way to balance it with, half SHL teams and half J teams. I don't know exactly the way that would work out. Like I said, I haven't participated in this year, but some way to keep the spotlight on the J a little bit too, I think would play huge into it.
Yeah, that'd be interesting. Or if you picked like 3 J teams and another 3 or 4 SHL teams. Obviously,
or
2 cups going, but
yeah, I think having 2 cups, I know it's a lot of work on them. And like I said, I do appreciate all the work that's being done on that. So let's go into, and as always, everybody, if you have questions, don't hesitate to put your questions in here. We love to talk with you guys. We love to get feedback on what you want to see. This is your show. We are just running it. We are chained down in a SHL dungeon. So give us some entertainment too. I'm gonna get off of the screen share real quick and just go back to both me and you. There we go.
Let's see.
So you like my plants? Since everybody was talking about your plant, I didn't want to feel left out.
Fair.
So yeah, there's your plant. So last week, another thing that I wanted to talk about that we did not get a chance to talk about. They announced last week, it was literally Friday afternoon, I believe, they announced in the SMJHL State of the Union some new changes to the rulebook on the J side. Shoresnor and Reno posted these, and I wanted to give them a shout out for them and talk about the changes. So the changes are, the first big change is regarding DFAs, which are draft eligible free agents, which are people that come in after the trade deadline. They have created after the trade deadline. They haven't been drafted by a team, so they're able to get picked up by a team until the end of the season, and then they get removed from that team and enter into the draft. That's, you guys had Flyers as a DFA, and then you ended up drafting him number 2. So it's a great way for these people not to have to for these players not to have to sit there and wait for the new season or the new draft to happen. They can take part in the plays, the games. So teams who pick up DFAs to replace inactive users will be given a $1 million bonus per DFA signed, up to a cap of $5 million, to share amongst rookies at the end of the season. If every DFA is signed, all teams will get an additional $5 million to share with rookies. If a team is full of active players and cannot sign a DFA, they will also receive a $5 million bonus. The bonus must be paid out between the end of 4-Star Cup and the SMJHL draft. I think that this is a great thing. It incentivizes teams to drop inactives to get these new users in. They get to participate in the games, get excited about it. They get to experience a locker room, because, I mean, Me and you, when we came in, we were put in the class Discord. That's all we knew. We didn't know about the locker rooms. And then once I got added to a locker room and saw all the fancy bells and whistles, I was blown away. So, really good rule. I want to see how it goes this season. I know most J teams are pretty full with actives. I know at Anchorage we are completely full with actives. We don't have any openings because all of our players are active right now. So I would like to see kind of how that plays out, but I think it's going to come into more of an effect probably next season when we have the expansion hit the SHL and how that changes some of the rosters in the J on moving up. What did you think about the rule, Toaster?
Yeah, like you said, I don't know how many open spaces teams have. I know in St. Louis we only have a goalie spot right now, but incentivizing teams to bring new players in rather than hold on to maybe higher TPE inactives, I think it'll be a great thing for the league in general.
Yep.
Getting the new people in and around.
And then the next change was if a team initiates contact with a draftee and that contact is not acknowledged, the team may drop that draftee after 48 hours post contact if the draftee has not completed any portal or forum activity in that same time. So talking about players who are drafted and then that team reaches out to them and there's no contact from them, is now that there isn't a penalty for that team dropping them. But not only that, teams would need to provide proof of it. So what this rule is trying to address is teams being afraid of drafting new players because of going inactive right off the bat or replacing an inactive with a lower TPE player. And then you draft that player, you've lost your inactive, and now that player's not talking to you. I think this rule gives the ability for that GM to go ahead and drop the rookie after they show head office proof that they've tried to contact and there's no contact back. And it doesn't hurt the team. They're able to keep the player that they're planning on keeping anyways. And it kind of works out really well for that team.
Yeah, it's nice that there's a sort of safeguard for the teams to not have to worry if anything does happen.
And then rookie bonuses, including the DFA bonus, must be paid between the end of 4-Star Cup and SMJHL draft. Failure to do so will be considered a late GM task. And then rookie bonuses must be posted as a transaction to the budget form. It's just getting. I think the reason why they made this rule is just getting the rookies paid, because right after, they're needing that they're needing that money because that training has increased. So making sure that they get that money in a quick manner is why they're doing that. So
well, they're still labeled as rookies, and before they realize that they actually need it.
Yep, exactly.
I know neither of us were hurting for money, but
there are rookies that are. There are
there
tons of rookies that hurt for money, and I think that these are all great rules from SMJHL HO, and I wanted to kind of cover them last week, but we just completely ran out of time, and just really great work by head office there.
Yeah, I think it'll help activity in the Jays, hopefully get some more user retention with people not having to sit around before they get on the team.
So before we start wrapping up, we're going to go into our question portion. But before I do that, I also want to point out that the trivia question is still at the top. Trivia question is, how many team awards trophies has the Great Falls Grizzlies won? Just answer in the chat. You'll be entered into a drawing if you get that number right. So I'm going to leave that up there. If you guys have any questions in the chat, please post them. We will definitely answer them as we go.
It looks like Dynamic asked, is it just the SHL that's expanding? Yes. So far, it is just the SHL by 4 teams. I think it'll be interesting to see how that affects the J, because there's probably going to be people pulled up after 3 years rather than 4. That might
Yeah.
drain out the active.
Yeah, I mean, if the classes still stay as big as they are, then I can see the J expanding down the line. It's not going to be next season, or maybe not even the season after that. We're going to have more big classes still coming in, but there is a huge pile up in the J. I mean, BB touches on it on their comment. It's sad that active users are going through waivers, not because of something on them, but because the teams are insanely full. It's great for the league as a whole that we have so many actives, but it's a pain since we likely needed J expansion even by 2 teams. I don't, I don't envy anybody that has to make these decisions, because it is tough, and it's tough to see people who wanted to get drafted, them not getting drafted because there is no spots. There's people who are creating right now that come into the league and they're sitting there because there are no spots. If you're a team, if you have spot, you need to pick them up. I think that's the only way that it can go right now. But so many teams do not have spots. Like I said, every time I see somebody come in, we look at them in Anchorage, but at the end of the day, we don't have room.
Can't get them. Yeah.
We have an inactive scratched. That's what we have. And they're not even inactive yet. They're just, I think they're inactive starting today. Is just keeping an eye on them. So getting into the questions that were asked on the forum again, if you guys have any questions, ask them here. I'm trying to see where. Oh yeah, there's the. All right, so. Our buddy Visceral Potamus had posted several questions for us to answer. He wants us to have a public shaming of all the teams who ruined Thunder Bay's, what he's calling, perfect record. That's probably the best way to act. That's the best way to be when you're on a team that is struggling so much, is just be trying to go for the perfect route. So
perfect record.
I will join in. The teams that have let Thunder Bay beat them are UConn.
Shame.
Kelowna.
Shame.
Anchorage.
Yeah.
No, you can shame us. I'm fine with
shame.
That. Colorado.
Shame.
They actually went on a 3-game win streak here. They beat Colorado. They beat Kelowna again. And they beat Anchorage again. Shame to all three. All three. And then that is it. So next week we'll see which ones we are shaming. Get your shame bell out.
I almost had to shame my own team because we got taken to a shootout. Oh well, we won. That's all good. No shame there.
The next question they asked was, if you were a GM of a team in a competitive window, would you trade a Discord active but low TPE earner for a 425 with no Discord presence?
Probably not.
I don't think I would. I mean, I think we've talked about this a lot. Especially just in our private chats, is what the J is. You want to win the 4-Star Cup. That's everybody's goal. But the J is the developmental league. You're trying to get all these players in to understand the experience of SHL, to understand the environment, to understand just everything you can about the SHL. And when you have a very active Discord, it helps even more. We're both in the Texas Discord, and there's so much information in there. Everybody, there's so much going on. There's so many people giving advice and tips and stuff. Feedback over in the Anchorage, Discord, it's very active. Helping out the rookies on what's going on, but also we have a lot of rookies that are experienced in the league, helping out in other ways too. So you cannot really put a price tag on Discord activity. And trading away active Discord player, I think would hurt your locker room at the end.
Yeah, because I think at least before I was drafted to a team, one of the most commonly brought up active locker rooms was QCC, and they've been a force for what 5, 6 seasons now, and I
Yep.
feel like that's a testament to it.
Well, and I think when you have an active locker room, that kind of translates into a lot of people having, kind of more desire to help out the team in many ways. And I don't know if that's what's happening in the QCC, but you may have many people looking at tactics, giving different opinions on tactics, and that they're able to pull and see which ones work. And that's maybe why they've never had that fall off, is because they have all that input to really help. Dynamic also said difference in being active on Discord and being active in the locker room. So active on Discord itself is probably participating in all the SHL channels. I think me and you are pretty much everywhere. Every corner of the league is what we say. We follow each other around into different ones. So, participating in the main SHL server, participating in your rookie server, participating in the card server.
There's any job servers you're in, fantasy.
There's so many. And I mean, I laugh about it now because I've been so many that I have selected once mute, that I only go back to them to read what I've missed. And so that's why I'll jump in the middle of conversation, is because I've missed so much because I had it muted, but now I'm coming back to it. But being active in the locker room is completely different because you're in your team server, talking to your teammates, talking to, alumni and stuff like that. And I think it provides a little bit more of a intimate setting, not in the romantic way, but in the, a lot of people may not be as open of being in the main SHL server and talking in that one as they would be in their locker room server, once they're able to kind of understand the vibes of the locker room server. You have anything on that, Toaster?
Yeah, kind of just echo what you say. I feel like there's a lot of people that, from outside looking in, people like, oh, they're not very active at all, but they're not in the locker rooms with some of the people that are more active there. I know because we've got a couple in St. Louis where I've never seen them send a message outside of the locker room, but they're constantly talking there.
And then his other question was, I just found out that the whalers used to take tortoises on their boats to eat while they hunted and killed whales. Once the boats were full of dead whale, they would toss extra tortoises down to drown, giving the level of historic violence to current players' species. How can the whaler branding be justified?
It can't. There's no redeeming them.
It can't. There should be no whalers allowed. If they want to switch to the whales, I'm all for it.
Yeah.
But the whalers are unacceptable. And then BB asked, right now the J is full, very full, with actives falling through waivers. We'll have about 50 people age out, and I know that there's hope that with expansion there will be more call-ups. But generally, with the past few classes have been fairly large, perhaps more than the 50 or so call-ups already scheduled. Do you think the J will remain full still next season? I think it will. I mean,
probably close to it, if not.
Our class had over 90 people. This past class had over 80 people. I don't know the exact number. So, I mean, we've been hovering around those, the past 2 seasons have been 90, 80. I mean, with 50 people aging out, and then you have to remember that's 4 teams, so let's, there's going to be 15, 17 players per team on that. So the max number that would be called up would be 68. So I think even with call-ups, I think the J will be pretty close to cap. And like I said, I think if we have a lot of people create this draft class, there's not as many that get called up with the expansion at the SHL, and we have a full J, then I think that basically speeds up expansion talks really quickly in the J. But I think that the fear is that if they were to expand the J, and all the work that comes with it, and then we don't hit a large draft class coming up or the next two drafts, and then now we have a J that has a bunch of inactive players, or teams running on empty, and you don't want that. So you're walking a very fine line of being full and being a great experience for everybody, and then making possibly a bad decision and having empty teams. I do like their perspective, and I'll read it. Each SHL team will lose 3 players in expansion. In some cases, they were already planning and expecting to call up their S80s, so they're likely already prepared to lose a few slots then. Then there's multiple teams which currently have less than 3 prospects in total, some of which I don't think will get called up due to being recent picks. From Buffalo's perspective, because BV is Buffalo's co-GM, we have expected S80 call-ups already, enough in theory to fill most of those slots. Outside of them, the main prospects would be me, Walrus, and whoever we picked this draft. The most ready would be me, but in a position with only 2 slots. And I'm hoping that to finish their time in Nevada before going to Buffalo to ensure I'm at a higher TPE. Wallace would not be high enough in TPE to be ready. Same with the latest draft picks. I can't speak for every team, but I don't think that there would be more than 10. And I can see that too. So, we may be talking about that right after the 4-Star Cup of what it's going to look like. So, are there any final questions from the audience before we wrap it up here? Any final questions? Toaster, do you have anything that you want to say before wrapping it up?
I noticed we skipped over one of Pasta's questions, and we're going to keep it that way.
I didn't know I skipped over it. Pasta, I'm sorry that I skipped over it. It was blurred out on my screen. I couldn't read it. I need new glasses.
I can see there's text there. I don't know what it says.
Yeah, it's completely blurred out for me.
It says number 4 and then nothing.
Yeah. But Toaster, congratulations on being named St. Louis's co-GM. Very happy for you. You've taken this league by storm. Everybody loves you in all the corners that we are in. And just very happy that was something that you want, and you ended up getting it.
Thank you.
And you'll be able to learn from Cake and Jimmy, and that's a great team to learn from.
Got very good mentors in there.
Before we get out of here, BB gave their perspective. Both arguments, both ways. I and honestly, I'm not in. I'm SHL, HO. I'm not in the JHO, so I don't know what's being talked about in there. I don't even really want to know. I don't think my brain can handle much more. It's a tough thing. I think, throughout the week we've seen it. HO can feel like they're making the right decision, and other people feel like they aren't. At the end of the day, I just want people to remember that everybody that works for the league, works in the league, cares about the league. They wouldn't give up their free time if they didn't care about this league. So treat people with kindness. That's all I'm ever going to say. We could have we had some really great discourse that led to really great conversations. And I think that's part of what's happening behind the scenes in JHO of trying to figure this out.
Yeah.
So
even though you love to hate on HO, there's still people. Got to be nice.
I am a person now.
So we all know what you look like too. You're a person.
Toaster, I really appreciate you as always being my co-host. SHL, we appreciate You as well. We love you. Have a great weekend. Bye bye.